So I wanted to make this video because I just wanted to talk about the comedy culture in America. I have lived in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. So I've been alive for 5 decades. Not for 5 decades, but I've been alive in 5 decades. There's a difference. And as a little kid, my favorite comedians during the 80s were Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, and Eddie Murphy for different reasons. Bill Cosby was the type of it was like your grandpa telling you jokes before you fall asleep or telling you a story before you fall asleep. So it was comforting. Eddie Murphy was erratic and funny, and I was able to relate to it. And Richard Pryor was hilarious. Like just like his inflections and how he told the joke, what he was talking about. Even if I didn't understand the concept of the joke, I understood the punchline. It was still funny because I understood the words coming out of his mouth. And then my most favorite comedian that I found when I was a kid in the 80s was George Carlin. He had a simple type of comedy that he did. He just pointed out the hypocrisies of being human, the hypocrisies of being in a society that's trying to fix everything but making things worse. The hypocrisies of both sides of the government, even though he obviously was leaning, but I don't think he'd be left leaning now if he was alive. Because, like most people who were left leaning in the 80s and 90s, now you find yourself, even though your political ideas didn't change, kind of like what's going on with Bill Maher right now, political ideals didn't change, but the political party you were part of is changing drastically. And it's like, okay, yeah. So he'd be centrist, depending who you talk to. You talk to like fucking ultra left person, they'll call you a Republican racist. They'd call him that too. He'd be in trouble for making his jokes because he didn't hold back any punches. And he was my favorite comedian. Like I quoted him all the time. I can't do it now because it's been a while since he's been gone, and you know, as humans we try to move on from things. Just like Robin Williams was my another one of my favorite comedians. He's gone. And I loved Robin Williams just because he was like, even though he had a privileged upbringing, he chose to live his life like, in the streets to learn how to, hone his craft. And he chose and learned and knew how to talk to, like, the blue collar people and the people that were struggling, and make them laugh and help them out and get them jobs. Actually, honestly, one of the only rich people I could think about that truly cared about everybody. And his death was a major loss too. It was sad. I have to admit, it was sad. Um, and the two of them kind of left a void when it comes to civic and population hypocrisy jokes and taking everybody down a peg. They never punched down; they punched across, and and in punching across before they got to the punchline, they would explain how like that their life was there at some point as well. Like they had been through hardship, and that's what made them pointing out the hypocrisy of everybody else so much funnier, because a lot of the people that they were pointing out their hypocrisy never had hardship. They're born rich, stayed rich, became politicians, made themselves richer by playing the stock market because insider trading. So, like Nancy Pelosi, and you know Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein. Like most of these women are from the Bay Area in California, but they ended up going all the way to Washington D.C. and having some of the top positions in the Senate. So yeah, it's fine to point out their hypocrisies. They made themselves public figures. But everybody tries to shy away from that now. There's only one comedian. Nope, two comedians right now that I think are trying to fill the void we lost uh, by losing um, Robin Williams, George Carlin, Richard Pryor. I mean, we haven't lost Eddie Murphy, but he doesn't really do stand up anymore. We lost Charlie Murphy, but I'm going to be honest with you. Eddie Murphy doesn't do stand up anymore, and Charlie Murphy didn't really become famous for stand up until Eddie Murphy stopped. So I kind of think that Eddie Murphy wrote for Charlie Murphy. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I apologize, but I kind of have a slight idea. But Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr fill that void to where they also, point out the hypocrisy of society and of mankind and of the rich and the poor alike. And they point out the things, and the reason they're funny is fun humor. What makes you laugh 9 times out of 10 is based on truth, and 9 times out of 10 is based on personal experience, and 9 times out of 10 is based on the ridiculousness. And when the truth is ridiculous and you have personal experience, that makes it so much funnier. So there's three avenues a comedian has got to hit there. There's more than that, but those are the three I'm going to suggest right now just to keep it simple. So if a comedian tells a joke that only hits one of those avenues, he's at least going to get a third to half of the people laugh at one of those. But when he tells a joke that hits all three, the entire room is going to be laughing except for the two really fat girls with huge brim glasses and green and blue hair with their arms crossed because they didn't show up for comedy. They showed up just to be mad. They actually paid money to show up to a comedy show and just sit there and be mad at the performer because they didn't like the performer before they went. That was their whole plan. Like, we're going to show up and try and ruin everybody else's time. And oh my God, everybody's having a good time. Well, now they're ruining my time. Like, I've talked to people that watched Dave Chappelle's the Daphne special. I don't remember the actual name of the special, but it's the special where he tells the story of Daphne. And I was talking to somebody, and I was like, I only want to hang out with people that like Dave Chappelle. And this person was like, "Oh, you mean that transphobic piece of shit, racist? Man, you're such a jerk." And I was like, "Have you even ever watched any of his specials?" And she was like, "Oh, what you mean like the one with the Daphne story where he forced her to commit suicide?" And I was like, "So you didn't watch it?" And she just looked at me and just stopped, and I was like, "So you didn't watch it?" And her friend comes over and goes, "Just ignore him, walk away." And I was like, "No, no, no, before you go away, I need to tell you the premise of the Daphne story. It was a love letter to his friend, somebody that made him laugh and that he cared about deeply. That's what that was. And it ended with him saying that he opened up because he was defending her. He talked about how she was calling him and he called her a she because that's what Daphne wanted me. He didn't give a fuck. He had a friend, and he was telling the story about how he loved his friend, and that's it. And then at the end he fucking said that he opened a college fund for her daughter. So yeah, I don't know how that's like transphobic and qualifies me actually liking him as being a jerk. But I'm glad that lady was drug away by her friend after that, because God forbid I tell her I like Bill Burr too, because then I would have got like, "Oh, he's so feminist and no, he just calls you women out on your shit. Like everything you say you want, he goes, well, if you want it, then do it." And they go, "Oh, now you're a fucking you're a sexist and you're a misogynist." No, these women and these people that get angry at Bill Burr also have no sense of humor and cannot laugh at themselves. And they're always looking to be the victim. In both cases, these people are not fans of these comedians. They just want to make themselves famous by being pissed off at these comedians. This is what these people are doing, and they know it very well, because then they could go on the internet and then maybe get an interview on a TV and then write a book, and then they'll get fans on like TikTok. These people are just trying to make money off of negativity because negativity sells, especially in America. These I mentioned some of the greatest comedians of all time, even Bill Cosby. Sure, he did some fucked up things, but he's been around since like the late 50s. No, no, mid 60s, I think, as a comedian, and he's an old ass man, and he did some fucked up things, but he still is one of the great comedians. Still is. And if you don't want to say a great comedian, the very least you can say is he's a great storyteller, because that's what he did, and he just told stories that were funny that everybody could relate to without cussing, so children could be present. He's got some great jokes. So I just wanted to say, like, I think America is failing comedians now, when comedy is one of the greatest art forms that has ever existed. A comedian standing on stage, only standing behind a mic stand and a mic, and maybe able to lean on a bar stool. I was a drama kid. It's fucking nerve wracking enough when you go out on stage and there's other people there and like a set. Like, fuck, okay. Going out there by yourself with the spotlight just shining on you and doing something for an hour or an hour and a half, those people are fucking strong, brave, and have something to say. And you should probably listen to them because there's no way in hell you could ever do that. It would be hard. It was hard for me, and I was usually on a stage with like when I was out on the stage by myself, it was terrifying. But usually that was only for like a couple of solo performances for in a play, and that only lasted like 2-3 minutes, and then because I was doing a monologue, and then finally somebody else would walk in, but I'd still be surrounded by a set so I could feel comfortable. When you're just sitting there standing in front of a brick wall with just a microphone and a fucking spotlight, you better have something to say that's important. Don't just get up there and make like stupid jokes like Hannah Gadsby, which aren't even jokes. It's just her talking about how she's a lesbian and loves cunt, and people think that's funny. It's not. Nothing. Or what's her face, the blonde bitch that did fucking Chelsea Handler. Yeah, you ain't funny. You're sad and pathetic. You're like you're trying to compensate with something with your words that you can't do with your body anymore, and it's really just like shut up. You're not funny. And then what's her face? God damn it, I can't remember her name, but I think she's Italian because she's got a big ass nose and has a sex doll of herself. Whitney Cummings. There you go. Yeah, she used to be funny. She used to be hilarious. I don't know what happened to her because like she's just not a funny person anymore. I think the only two people really propping up, well, the two people propping up comedy right now in 2023 are Bill Burr. Well, there's three: Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, and Kevin Hart. They're kind of holding it up, and underneath that is like 20 to 25 like up and coming kids that are fucking hilarious, but just haven't gotten that spotlight yet. But they'll get it soon enough. Comedy is making a comeback, and that's because people are just getting tired of this fucking cancel culture, PC, as George Carlin would say, PC bullshit. When a guy came back from World War One, he had shell shock. It was really easy to understand what he had, and then he goes his whole bit is going through every war until it comes down to PTSD. They just soften everything. That's PC speak. That's why he's one of my favorite fucking comedians. I love I love George Carlin. So, and if you've never listened to George Carlin, I I beg you, just go on YouTube. One of his HBO specials is bound to be on YouTube. It's like George Carlin in Manhattan or something is probably on YouTube for free. He's way before his time, and the person that replaces George Carlin right now, well, the two of them are Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle. Kevin Hart's funny as fuck too, but and he's very successful, but he's not on the same level as Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr. They're on a different level. Top, they're like it's Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, but only by a little bit. So I just wanted to create this as like an ode to comedians. Thank you.